Hello, I'm Mark Crutcher, President of Life Dynamics, and we welcome you to Life Talk, and I'm here with my lovely assistant, Renee. Hello, Renee.
Well, thank you. Hello.
Lots of things going on, of course. First off, I think something that's just very kind of symbolic more than anything else. The State Medical Board in Arkansas now has decided to go back and start using the term unborn child
Yes.
for an unborn baby.
Right. It's the terminology.
You're
You
right.
can't get away with using
Yeah, fetus.
fetus, whatever
Right.
else they use.
The state abortion regulations now will delineate the child as an unborn child.
Yeah.
And, of
Good.
course, naturally, the pro-aborts are screaming
All or
high
nothing,
heaven
yeah.
about this. But
That's okay. It
what
is
else
what it
is
is.
What else? Is it a parrot or a spider or what?
Well, it's a clump of cells. They claim that.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
We also see a new report out from Pew Research showing that the teen abortion rate and the teen birth rate are falling to historic lows. Now, it's interesting how this thing was kind of spun. One statement that they made in here, it says the analysis does note that more sexually active teens are using emergency contraception. But that's only among sexually active teens. It doesn't mean that this is the cause of the drop.
Right.
One of the things that they noticed is that teenagers are having less sex than they have in the past.
Right. And they do say that it's because of social media. They claim that.
Right.
Whether that's true or not, who knows?
Who knows?
But
But the fact is that they've been pushing birth control since the mid-'60s. And they're not pushing it any more today than they were then. They've always pushed contraception-based, value-neutral sex education and birth control. And so if you're seeing a historic rise while all that's going on, then all of a sudden you start seeing a drop. You've got to look at that and say, okay, what changed? And what changed was that you started seeing schools now pushing abstinence. And when abstinence started being pushed, then this birth rate, the abortion rate, teenage pregnancy rate, all started going down.
drops, right.
And yet they don't want to admit that that's what the deal is. But the pushing of birth control and contraception has not changed. So that can't be the factor.
reason,
Right,
right.
the reason for this.
Right.
And they're just trying to hopscotch around it, and they don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
We're seeing some interesting things in Europe that mimic what's going on here in the United States. First off, right after the Soviets lost control of Poland, the Polish government started restricting abortion, basically making it illegal, protecting the unborn. One of the interesting things about that is, if you look at the maternal health factors, all of them got better after abortion was stopped. All this chest beating that the pro-aborts do about, oh, these women are going to be dying in the streets, like we heard here in Texas with HB2.
Right, where
Right.
there's hundreds of thousands of women that are self-aborting and dying.
Right.
Yeah, where are they?
Where they're dropping dead in the
Right.
streets. And, of course, we see them all the time, right? I mean, every time
Right.
we go out to lunch, we have to
Oh,
step
yeah,
over their
I know.
bodies.
Yeah,
They're
it's-
everywhere.
It's awful.
But anyway, now the pro-aborts, of course, over there are trying to push for the Polish government to back off and allow legalized abortion. And one of the big symbols that they've adopted from the United States is coat hangers. And they're doing these things like we see here where they wear white pants and then put blood all over their crotch area, so it makes it look like they've been botched in abortion,
Right.
hurt in abortions.
Right.
And they just do all this outrageous thing. Somebody, again, and we've talked about this many, many times here. If abortion were outlawed today, and next week a bunch of women died from coat hanger abortions, those coat hangers would have been in the hands of pro-choice people,
That's right.
not pro-life people.
That's right. We're not doing it. They
We're
are.
we're
right.
not doing abortions.
Right.
You and I are not into abortion business. We've
Right.
never done them. We're never going to do them.
Right.
And so when you see these people out there waving these coat hangers around and saying, never again, we're not going to go back to this,
Then don't do it.
then don't do it.
Hello.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do them.
Right.
That's all you got to do. And so we can solve this coat hanger abortion problem like that. We will, I've challenged the pro-aborts. I used to challenge them on this many, many years ago, 25, 30 years ago when I was debating with them. I'd say, I'll tell you what, we can solve the coat hanger abortion thing right now, and here's how we'll do it. I will get every pro-lifer in the country to sign an agreement that they will never do a coat hanger abortion. If you will get every pro-abort in the country
Right.
to sign an agreement saying they'll never do coat hanger abortions.
I bet that didn't go well.
No, it didn't go well.
No.
But the fact is, if women wind up dying, when every woman that was ever died in an abortion, every woman that ever was raped in an abortion clinic, was killed by a pro-abort or raped by a pro-abort. So why are we responsible for that?
Right. We're not responsible for it. We're only trying to save the lives of the unborn and the mothers themselves.
And the mom.
Right.
So if you don't like coat hanger abortions, don't do abortions.
Keep them in your closet and put clothes on them, right?
Right, that's right. Put clothes on them, right. Speaking of nutcases in Europe, we've talked about this, and this woman is like, you look up pro-abortion nutcase in the dictionary, you see her picture in there. Rebecca Gompert, we've talked about her many, many years ago. She started a thing called Women on Waves many, many years ago,
Right.
where they're doing abortions out on the high seas near these countries that don't allow abortions.
Right. Yeah, because they can get away with it because it said the international seas.
Right.
It's not owned by that country.
Not owned by any particular country. So,
Right.
And so they bought these old fishing trawlers or something and set up abortion mills inside them. I mean, it was the most dangerous thing you could possibly imagine. First off, if a woman had a problem,
Right. Where is she going to go?
what's going to happen with her?
Yeah.
I think, Zentra, when Zentra Tuttle was my assistant here, she used to say, well, they just throw them overboard and the sharks take care of the problem. Who knows they're there, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds outrageous.
But it's probably true.
But we've seen things like that right here in the United States,
Right.
where they try to dispose of the bodies of women they've
Right.
killed. So, I mean, it sounds outrageous, but who
Right.
knows,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And as Zentra used to say, this is not women on waves, this is women on drugs. Any woman that would submit to this sort of thing.
It's true.
Well, now she has taken this to a new level.
Good for her.
What do you think she's doing there, Renee?
Could it be anything to do with drones? Possibly taking the abortion pill over from Germany to Poland?
They are flying
Yes.
abortion pills in on
Right.
drones and dropping them off to women in Poland,
That
and they'll
is
do it in other countries
So
too.
dangerous.
These people are whacked.
Yeah. I mean, that they could get in the hands of the wrong person, and I don't know. It's just everything about it's dangerous. And I honestly don't know how she's getting away with it.
Sarah in our office was laughing about the fact that they were concerned because they were thinking the German government might try to shoot these drones.
Well, they need to.
Right.
Every time they see one going over,
Pop
pull
off.
it out. Yeah.
It's just amazing what the lengths these people will go to kill a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, they're desperate.
They're desperate
They are
to kill
desperate
these babies.
people.
And you can kind of see some examples of this right here in the United States, of course. Abortion clinics now are talking about the fact that fewer women are wanting abortions. The demand for abortion, which I've always argued this in my new book, Siege, the demand for abortion is soft, contrary to what these people will tell you. The demand for it from a business perspective is very soft. Even in states like California. One of the things that's interesting is that they blame the closing of these abortion clinics on laws that are passed basically in red states like Texas and
Right.
Oklahoma and Alabama and places like that. But there's a new study out now that shows that for every 3 abortion clinics that close in a red state, 2 close in a blue state.
Praise God.
And even like in California, there's a woman named Shauna Heckert that was recently interviewed about this, and she owns a chain of 6 abortion clinics in Northern California. She's been there for 40 years, and she says she's worrying about having to close. She said, quote, "We are a dying breed." Another woman, Peg Johnson, said, quote, "We've cut every cost we can think of. We have cut salaries. We have stopped giving raises. We haven't given raises. We're still hanging on by our fingernails." Basically, she said, because of economics.
Right.
And I wrote in my new book, Siege, about the economic problems that the abortion industry faces. The pro-life movement has this mistaken view that the abortion industry is making so much money that they're so financially sound, they're just almost unstoppable. The fact is they've got massive economic problems, and I detail those in that new book.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
And now they're coming out and saying the exact same thing.
Yeah. And this is a woman's right to choose, and she's choosing to keep her baby.
Right.
Too. So.
So what's the problem here? If it is about a woman's right to choose, and more women are choosing to have their babies alive rather than dead,
Right.
and that's a terminology we need to make sure that we push, because you keep on hearing these people say, and we have women call us on the 800 line all the time that says, I'm not going to have this baby, or I couldn't have the baby. That's the reason she had an abortion.
Right.
Every woman who's pregnant has the baby.
Right, yeah.
That's a
right.
biological reality. You can't change that.
That's right. She's pregnant. There was a living baby inside of her.
She's going to have a baby. The question is it going to be a live baby or a dead baby?
Right.
And more women are choosing to have live babies.
Right.
And these people are seeing this as a major trauma, and that they're talking about having to close up, and this is going to be a detriment for women. Well, how is it a detriment for women if they don't
If
want to
they're
be
not
abortion?
going in anyways. Exactly.
You know, I've talked to you before, and matter of fact, I was talking to you about it just the other day, we were talking about atheism and its relationship to abortion and so forth, and I was bringing up the issue of Christopher Hitchens. And he was a hardcore atheist, and I used to watch him on debates. He would debate Jerry Falwell, or he would debate, whoever, Dr. Dobson. He's debated a whole bunch of people on the issue of, is there a God or not? And of course, Christopher Hitchens always took the other side. But he was not like one of these people who was just, first off, insulting to people who do believe. Like most of them are. They'll tell you that you're an idiot and that you're a Neanderthal and you believe in this fairy tale of Jesus and all this. He wasn't like that. He was always respectful. And when you watched him, you got the feeling that this guy was really conflicted. He was searching, And I often wonder, and it's what I brought up to you, if when he was dying, and when he knew he was dying, if he started having, second thoughts. There's a book out now about that in which people that knew him said that he was conflicted. But the interesting thing is, and I always felt some sort of affinity for the guy because he did seem intellectually honest, as opposed to, say, the Richard Dawkins of the world or the Peter Singers who agitate for abortion even after birth. Peter Singer saying, yeah, they ought to be able to abort up to 28 days after birth.
Yes.
And Richard Dawkins, who actually said that bringing a Down syndrome baby into the world is immoral, that you have a moral obligation to kill these babies. He wasn't in that vein of people. And you wouldn't say that he was pro-life in the sense that, like you and me, who would go out and fight to stop abortion. But he made a lot of statements, and he would say, look, I can't ignore the biological realities. Forget the spiritual part of it. I can't ignore the biological realities. And he said he was not a scientist, but he said he grasped the reality of conceived human life better than the prominent scientists of the New Atheist movement, declaring that he was pro-life. Quote, for materialistic reasons, it seems to me obvious from the discoveries of biology and embryology that the concept of unborn child is a real one. And it has to be granted to the church that it has made this a centerpiece of its ethic and its morality. So he obviously understood, and I've said before, I think an atheist has more reason to be pro-life than a Christian.
Well, and I also read a thing last night that he said that was pretty powerful, and he said he believes all should be done to protect the life of the fetus in utero. Every recent advance in medicine and embryology is pushing back the date of viability.
Right.
Which is, he was obviously pro-life.
He understood.
He understood.
He was intellectually honest, is what he
Right,
was.
right.
He knew the same thing that these degenerates like Richard Dawkins and Peter Singer knew. He knew exactly the same things.
That's right.
The difference was he cared and they didn't.
Right.
He was intellectually honest and they're intellectually dishonest.
Right.
Now it comes out in this new research that's being done on him that he had a personal issue with abortion. He found out later in his life, he didn't know this earlier on, that his sibling that immediately preceded him, his brother or sister, his mother aborted, and she aborted the one immediately after him.
Right.
So he was right in the middle of two abortions.
Right, yeah.
And
That had to have been tough.
That had to have affected him.
Right.
We've talked about that before.
Right.
And just the other day, you and I had a probably, 2-hour conversation with a woman who called on the phone about her inability to bond with her two sons, who are now 39 and 41?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something
And she's
like
still, she's blubbering with us over the phone about this.
Right.
Because
And
she couldn't
She
bond.
was an older lady. Yes.
Right. And we've talked to people before that have had what might be called survivor guilt, when they knew that one of their siblings was killed, but they weren't. And so it affects born children, and it affects mothers and how they relate to their born children.
Right.
And I think Christopher Hitchens is a good example of that.
Well, and he also had, out of 5 of his children, he had 2 aborted as well. He had 2 with one woman and divorced her and had another with another woman. So,
Yep, he's personally impacted by it.
right.
And but another little tragedy a tragic sidelight to this is his mother had these 2 abortions of his sibling right before him and right after him, and then she committed suicide. And it's not made clear here whether the suicide was related to the 2 abortions or not.
No, it's not clear.
But you got to believe
Right.
it had some impact.
Right. Yeah, she was a miserable person.
Right.
She couldn't handle.
She couldn't handle it. And like this one lady you and I spent a couple hours with on the phone the other day,
Yeah.
this woman is in her 60s.
Yes.
And she told us she feels like her life is over. She can't deal with this any longer.
Right.
And she talked about having her abortion in 1974,
Yes.
42 years ago.
Yeah.
And she's still crying about it today. And she said she never bonded with her 2 sons.
Yeah. Everything that they say that abortion does has done to her, as far as becoming an alcoholic, not
Right.
bonding with her children,
Yep.
miserable, crying.
Right.
That was a really hard conversation.
It really was. It was sad.
I wanted to leave through the phone and help her, to
Right,
be there to
right.
comfort her.
Well, I think we did help her.
We
and,
did.
And she's going to let us know how things go.
Yeah.
We gave her some ideas, and we're going to try to get her some counseling and so forth. But
Yeah.
she has carried this burden around for 42
years. Yeah.
She's carried this around since then.
Yeah.
And
they say that it doesn't affect women.
Right.
There's-
it's
a lie.
such a lie.
Yeah.
And speaking of atheists, we talked about a minute ago. A guy named Greg Rubottom in Missouri is complaining about the state legislature there wanting to pass some pro-life legislation. And this is an example of what you said the other day. This guy better be sure he's right.
Yeah, this
the
guy
statements that-
really does tick me off.
Yep.
Anyways, to
He says,
explain
for
it.
the record, life does not begin at conception. Both sperm and egg are already living organisms. When sperm and egg come together, this triggers a conception, which then becomes the developing potential for human life. Any mad scientist can produce conceptions in the lab with the right ingredients. God has absolutely no say in the matter.
The thing is that these scientists are playing God. This is not God's will. This is man's will to create life. And he's saying that word, potential human life.
There's no such thing as a potential human life. It's either a life or it isn't.
And Greg Rudenbottom wants people to go to JesusBasics.com so he can teach people that aren't well rounded in the Bible to confuse them.
Right, exactly. That's what this is about.
He's twisting what God says. Oh.
You know, when you take this stand, is what you and I were talking about the other day. When you take a stand like this, you better be right.
Yes, you better be right.
Because when you die, if you turn out to be wrong, boy, the consequences are pretty high for this.
Hopefully he'll
And he
figure
is
that
wrong.
out. Yeah.
And he is wrong. And he says that if you have been taught to believe that God would desire you to bear a child against your will just because conception has taken place, may God help you to see the illogical nature of your beliefs. And that's where he talks about people should go to JesusBasics.com and get the truth from him.
You're right. Yeah, please get the truth from him when he doesn't know the truth himself.
Why couldn't you just, and when he says just because conception has taken place doesn't mean there's a baby there. You could replace the word conception with birth, just because a birth has taken place.
Right.
You had nothing to do with that. That was a naturally occurring phenomenon. So therefore, just because a birth has taken place, that doesn't mean you can't kill that child.
That's right.
These people are whacked.
He's like another Peter Singer.
Some good news. In some recent elections around the country, Emily's List, the raging collection of pro-aborts, is getting their clock cleaned. They're losing almost every election
Good.
that they
Emily's
pour money,
List.
millions of dollars into. They're losing them.
Keep pouring that money in there.
Right. Keep
Yeah.
pouring that pro-abortion money in there.
Yep.
And some of these races that they were in that they lost, the races weren't even close. I mean, they lost by wide margins.
Well, because nobody wants the stigma of abortion behind them, attached to them.
Here's an interesting thing. They're talking about a recent poll by NARAL, National Abortion Rights Action League, found that, listen, this is interesting because I talked about this phenomenon also in Siege, found that young pro-life voters are much more likely to consider abortion an important issue than young pro-choice voters. And, you know, I talked about in Siege, this is one of the things that the pro-aborts are having a problem with, that even the people who consider themselves pro-choice won't necessarily see that as a voting issue. And we've always known that when you see people that identify themselves as pro-life versus people who identify themselves as pro-choice, pro-life people are more than 2 times as likely to say that's what's going to determine who I vote for than pro-abortion people are.
Right.
And So not only are their numbers dropping, because while they've been having abortions, we've been having babies as far as the demographics go, but also the people they have been having aren't buying into their agenda. So this is very good for the future, and it's one reason that Planned Parenthood and all these other people in the abortion industry are going out of their way to go after young people. And this is a place where I've talked about again in Siege. We have to draw a line in the sand and say, we are going to fight for these young people. They're coming over to our side in droves. We can't afford to lose them. This is an opportunity that we cannot afford to muff.
That's right.
And you know, as I say in Siege, wars are more often won by the side that made the fewest mistakes than by the side that did the most things right. So you're better off to do fewer things right if you'll do fewer things wrong, because it's those mistakes that cost you the war.
Right.
And it would be a major mistake for us not to support and educate these young people that are coming in, and we're looking at doing some things here to ratchet that up.
We are.
But we've got to educate and support these young kids that are coming in, or we're going to lose them.
That's right.
Because the abortion industry is going after them. They're burning the midnight oil going after these kids because they see these problems that they're having.
Yes,
and
they
they're
do.
already having them.
Yeah.
All right. The other day, I got a call from my good buddy, lives here in Waco, another good Texan, of course. He wasn't in Waco at the time, Rusty Thomas from Operation Save America. And he called to get a bunch more MAFA 21s, and he has put out about as many of them as we've had. There's a couple people in the country that put out more, but not many people have put out more than he has. And he's been really on the front lines of trying to get the African-American church involved. And he was giving me a lot of good feedback on it, so I thought I'd have him come on this morning. Hello, Rusty.
Good morning, Mark.
How are you, sir?
I am pressing on in Jesus' name, my friend.
Good. That's what you're supposed to be doing.
Amen.
Hey, tell me some of the things you were saying the other day about what you're seeing in the black church as a result of MAFA 21.
Well, brother, just for Operation Save America, that has been, one of the nuts we've been seeking to crack, because our view was simply this: because our black brothers and sisters have been targeted by this monstrosity, they hold a major key to liberating America from this evil. And so we have been blessed. God has raised up a brother. His name is Bishop Otis Kenner from New Orleans. And, brother, he got it. I literally saw God birth this guy into the battle. He connected the dots between abortion and the racial component that has led to black genocide. And so now he is our liaison between OSA and the black church in America. And, of course, one of the items, one of the necessary tools to illuminate this battle and how it negatively impacts the black community is MAFA 21. And by God's grace, brother, we've been able to get out thousands, literally thousands of copies into the black churches. And slowly but surely, God is opening their eyes, He's breaking their hearts, and He's recruiting them into the battle. And so we are seeing more and more our black brothers and sisters standing in the gap and making up the hedge. And it's been a great development. And thank you for your work on that project, Mark.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. I've said many times, we developed the MAFA project, but you guys are the ones who are out there making it work, because you're on the front lines. We can't be everywhere. So we've got people like you and Walter Hoy and Johnny Hunter and Clenard Childers and a bunch of other people around the country who are really putting this thing out. I mean, the success of the MAFA project has been staggering. We thought, and I think I talked to you about this at the time, Rusty, back when we first came out with it, we thought we'd sell or put out maybe 2,000 of them a year, and it might last 4 or 5 years, so we'd get 8 or 10,000 copies if we were successful. That was what we thought at the time. So far, because of the heroic efforts of people like you and some of the others that I've mentioned, and others, we've put out over 175,000 copies of MAFA.
My goodness.
We're getting to the point now we're going to have to restock with them. We're getting low on them again. But we've put out over 175,000 so far. And the interesting thing is, it doesn't seem to be slowing down. I think this thing is evergreen. I think it's going to continue to go. And in fact, I've been saying lately, Rusty, that I think that the minute that Barack Obama is out of office, the effect of MAFA 21 is going to take off again, because there's so many blacks in the country right now who almost feel like they're being disloyal. They know that Barack Obama is a raging pro-abort. But they
Right.
feel like they're almost being disloyal to him if they criticize him for it. Well, once he's gone, that barrier will be taken away from us. And I think that you're going to see even more impact in the black community because of MAFA 21 and some other things that are being done. But it's basically our argument that abortion was legalized as an instrument of black genocide and continues to do that to this day. And that is starting to resonate in the black community. People are seeing what's happening.
Well, and I know that I came in after the fact that MAFA was made, but the calls that we get is astounding of people, of blacks that had watched the DVD and have rewatched it over and over, and they just want to do something. They want to get out there. They want to get their people together and stop this.
Right, that's right.
They didn't realize what was going on.
What we're communicating to our black brothers and sisters is the march is not over. You know, for a lot of our black brothers and sisters, they sort of reminisce and honor, you know, the Frederick Douglasses, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, and we've come a long way in that regard. But, brother, there's been a racism that led to slavery. There's been a racism that led to Jim Crow laws and discrimination. But now we're dealing with a racism that has literally led to black genocide. And when their eyes are open to this reality, again, their heritage just kind of jumps up, and it empowers them and inspires them to know this march is not over. We have another injustice that has been committed against our people, and we need to rise up and end it in Jesus' name. And that's the hope that's set before us. And MAFA 21 is leading the way in that regard.
Well, I appreciate the work that you guys are doing out there on the streets. But before we let you go, Rusty, tell us what's going on right now. You've got a big event coming up this summer, and why don't you tell everybody what that's going to be about?
Well, July 16th to the 23rd, we're going back to Wichita, Kansas for our national event, and this represents the 25th anniversary of the Summer of Mercy. And those who have been in this battle for some time know the relevance of what happened in July of 1991. A week-long pro-life event turned into a 2.5-month heaven-sent revival. Over 3,000 Christians were arrested for storming the gates of hell. When we went in there, Mark, there was 5 operating death camps. Immediately 2 shut down, and eventually all 5 came to an end. And for 4 years, Wichita had peace in their city. Well, you know the tenacity of the abortion industry. They could not let that go unanswered. And so they reopened another clinic at Tiller's old place. And it's more than just an operating clinic, Mark. This is a shrine. This is their museum to Tiller's memory. We must understand that George Tiller's abortion mill in Wichita was not just a citywide Moloch, an altar to Baal. This was an international Moloch. This was an international high place. People traveled from all over the world to come specifically to do the unspeakable to their own children. And if you recall, he literally had an incinerator at his death camp. And I can remember literally being outside that death camp, preaching the gospel, pleading with parents not to do this to their children, and literally smelling the remains of babies and their ashes falling upon our bodies. It was surreal, brother. So when we went in 1991, that was abortion at its high water mark. There was 2,167 freestanding abortion mills, and then in 1991, the battle shifted. And now, Brother Mark, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 515 death camps remaining. And so what got started in 1991, we're hoping to complete in 2016.
That's great. I think you're going to rock the pro-life movement again, like it happened in the Summer of Mercy in 91.
Well, I don't expect, brother, that it's going to be like the same time frame reference, like 2.5 months. But spiritually, I believe that is true, Mark, because we're getting such a response nationally. And what's really great, we got a lot of local church support. They remember how God moved back in the day. And right now, honestly, Mark, we have more prayer, more intercession going on nationally and locally in Wichita that we ever had going in to do an event. So we're expecting great things. We're asking God for a double portion. And we pray that as we go and we put God's axe to the root of this bloody tree, that it would also set in motion the closing of other death camps around America.
Well, listen, Rusty, we're out of time, but let me ask you something real quick. If somebody wanted to get involved, do you have a website or someplace they can go to get some more information?
Sure, they can go to OperationSaveAmerica.org, and there's a Wichita banner. They can press on that and get all the information they need.
Well, thank you very much for being with us, Rusty, and thank you for what you're doing with the Ma'afa project. We could not have the successes we're having here at Life Dynamics without the people in the field like you that are toiling out there every day to get this message out. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Rusty. We'll be praying for you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. And Mark and Life Dynamics gang, you're doing an awesome work, and I just want you to know the seeds that you're sowing, God is watering, and He will give the increase. Lord bless you guys.
Thank you, Rusty.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir. Boy, Rusty sounds like he needs to get a little more energy.
He's on fire. Woo! I felt that energy.
Well, that's the way he's always been, so
Yeah.
he hadn't backed off any
Yeah.
as he's gotten older. Before we go, I want to remind somebody tell people about a story that happened recently in Oklahoma. Pro-Life Action Network of Oklahoma, they have a affiliate there, was on a sidewalk in front of an abortion clinic, and a black lady came up, was going into the abortion clinic, and they tried to talk to her, and were able to talk to her, and a sidewalk counselor there took her aside and talked to her, and she decided not to have the abortion, which, of course, you say, well, that happens all the time. What's the big deal about this one? Well, first off, it's a big deal anytime a baby is saved.
That's right.
In this case, the woman didn't know it. She was carrying triplets.
Yeah.
She now has 3 little kids.
Yes. Praise God. You know, when I read this story, all I kept thinking was, what if, I don't like that what if, but if she had gone through with the abortion, what would have happened while she was laying there? Would the abortionist have stopped it because she needed to pay more, or would they have,
Well,
I mean,
maybe because we've seen that before.
yes, we have. We have stories upon stories.
Yeah, they start doing the abortion, they pull out an arm,
Right.
then they pull out another right arm, and
Right.
whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's twins or triplets here. We got to stop and charge her more money.
Yeah. Yeah, but she's one happy mama. That's
Yeah.
great.
She had
Yeah.
triplets and didn't even know she was carrying
Yeah.
triplets.
Yeah. Very, not, I mean, it's not common at all.
And so she was blessed 3 times.
That's right.
Not just once.
That's
She
right.
was blessed 3 times. But anyway, it was a neat
Yeah,
story, and I
that
thought
is a neat story.
we'd end up the show with that.
Yeah.
We're out of time. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.
Until next time, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how this killing will stop.